It's okay to bark and it's okay to bite. Especially as men, it's okay to be a dog. I was at a party. Somebody came up behind me, a training partner, and decided it would be funny to choke me out unconscious. I'm having a conversation with somebody, they come up behind me, throw a rear naked choke on, and I'm like struggling, kind of like freaking out a little bit within, a few seconds. Like I'm like falling to the floor and like, do not disrespect me. If you can approach your physical practices, your hobbies, even weight training, with this, like I need to listen to my body, the amount of connection and strength that you will get is like unfathomable. The most surprising aspect, and that I'm continuously being re-surprised about, is
the credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Vitruvian Podcast, a podcast centered around the pursuit of truth and personal renaissance. I'm your host, Zach Shankin. Today, I'm joined by Bam Lionheart. He is a master of movement, founder of the Primal Movement program and pedagogy, if you will. He's also a noble savage in his own right and an interesting character who I had the pleasure of meeting this weekend. So a synchronous encounter has led to this conversation. Bam, welcome to the show.
Dude, a great encounter, first encounter, and really stoked and honored to be here. So thank you very much for having me.
I'm super excited, bro. It's like I said, it was a very serendipitous encounter that we got to meet at a fun event here in LA, and mutual friends obviously overlap pretty well. So I had an intuitive feeling I think we would connect, and obviously we had a couple of like really interesting and fairly quickly in-depth conversations that I was excited to get into. I think you're a very like heart-forward individual. You speak openly about stuff that like matters. Obviously, we've off camera been having quite a few conversations about interesting topics, which hopefully we can broach into. But I hate to do the lazy podcast question, but I do think it's important for people to know who they're listening to. Mm-hmm. So I'll ask it like this, and how you answer it will allow our audience to interface and then also give me something to go off of. But based on where you've come from, what would you say is important for someone to know about you, to know who they're listening to today?
I came from a deep obsession and curiosity about athleticism and movement. And growing up in the suburbs of LA County and being placed in a school chair, was very aware that like athleticism and movement was something that I had to actively strive for to get for myself. And that it was difficult to do that while in like a school setting. And so from a very early age, have been pursuing movement mastery and increasing my capacity to move in so many different ways. And now have the absolute honor and privilege to share movement education and movement awareness to as many different human beings who will listen. And to sum up really kind of where I came from and what I did was, I didn't think that I was an athlete growing up. I didn't feel like that. I was like smaller stature guy, had older brothers that would, ground and pound me as they should. And so I always felt like, man, I got to do more. I got to be more. And it wasn't until I started training martial arts at 15, specifically jiu-jitsu, where I entered into that world and was getting smashed and demolished by grown men, choking me out, doing arm bars. 3 months into that, I started to have competency and capacity within that environment because I got educated, because I had instructors and leaders who were like, this is how you do this movement, or the reason that you got messed up here is because of X, Y, and Z. So let me show you the technique. Let me help you drill that, and drill and drill and drill and show up tomorrow and practice. And through martial arts training, I watched my physical body, my capacity to engage in violent sports change like really rapidly. And then that changed my confidence. That changed like how I appeared in the rest of the world. And so the story around athleticism also changed to where it wasn't, oh, you either are an athlete or not, or you are strong or you're not strong. the story then was, what do you want to do with your physical body? Okay, pick what you want to do. Now go train that. Go learn that. Go drill that. Find that technique and show up again and again and again until you have that capacity. And so this martial arts mindset of training to evolve ourselves like you would a video game character, okay, like agility, speed, or like anything, is like a real life thing. And once martial arts broke that open for me, I've taken this martial arts mindset, this movement-based training mindset, to so many different arenas: endurance running, swimming, climbing, gymnastics, weightlifting, and the rabbit hole continues to go deeper. And so it's really fun to invite people into that process, into understanding movement and how to learn how to be a better human athlete.
It's amazing. Do you feel like, though, that level of conscientiousness or consciousness around that process was driven by some sort of like insecurity, like you were kind of alluding to? Because the only reason I ask is that many people are high school athletes, are college athletes. Like, they go through sports. Many people listening to this probably were as well. But you clearly have like there was a unique focus from an early point to like hyper focus or like make this kind of a central part of your life. Was it because you felt insecure or unsafe in your body at the time?
Yeah, it was because I was experienced bullying and had this general like fear in my body around don't get bullied, don't put yourself in these circumstances, and nothing crazy, but was definitely aware of that. And so I really did not appreciate that low level fear that was in my belly, that I couldn't just completely relax and say, if something bad happened or someone approached me and there was a conflict, like, we would be okay. And now I have that. And because of that, like, you get to be like a silly goose. You get to actually relax in the world. And so there was like, okay, here's something I'm afraid of. I want to dive into that. And then, similar to right now, surfing is my big passion. Going out into like huge waves at one point was like, dude, that's terrifying. Okay, let's go into that. And so I really like to go into the fear or into the places where I'm like, ooh, this is uncomfortable. And like through going into that uncomfortability, like you expand where you're comfortable, where you're capable to move and be in the world, which is like, I am now, my breadth of freedom to be myself is like much wider. And so through the physical medium, through movement training, through sports, through hobbies, I'm like increasing how much comfortability I have to be really authentic in myself. Do
you feel like there's anywhere in your life where that insecurity still like lingers or still shows up?
I think right now it's surfing, but it's like calming down quite a bit. It's really intimidating to go into a lineup of surfing and to have everyone be watching you and to like not know what you're doing. But it's clear it's going over. So we don't know. Surfing is the one I'm focused on. And then as soon as surfing gets that, like, dude, I'm comfortable here. I can go to any lineup. I can go to any wave around the world and I'm going to have a good time. I know what I'm doing. Right when that happens, then the next thing appears. So I'm not sure what the next thing will, but there's always going to be a next.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, there's the big unknown for sure. I guess obviously you've alluded to the fact that the movement bleeds into your everyday life because it's like freedom in the body, and then downstream of that is the life that you live in that body, the relationships, the businesses, etc. Would any of those, do you still feel like that chip on the shoulder, like the small kid, the insecure, the bullied kid
in my life right now?
Like in your life, yeah.
He definitely comes out for sure. Yeah.
What does that look like?
I'll give you an example. It's like I was at a party. This was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and somebody came up behind me, a training partner, and decided it would be funny to choke me out unconscious. And so I'm having a conversation with somebody. They come up behind me, throw a rear naked choke on, and I'm like struggling, kind of like freaking out a little bit. Within a few seconds, like I'm like falling to the floor, and I wake up and I'm on top of this guy, and he's laughing. He thought it was like a funny thing, but that just triggered this like don't mess with me type of thing. I was on the dance floor, and so I started picking this guy up and like slamming him repeatedly, like da da da, and then climbed on top of him and started like shaking his, like grab his head and like shaked it. And it's just this like very strong, please, like do not disrespect me. You know, don't encroach yourself within my space. And if you do, I'm gonna get really angry.
Do you feel control in those moments?
No, it's a lack of control. Yeah. So it's a lack of control. And those moments can be really confusing. You know, when you do lose, you start to see red. And after that, I was really confused because a lot of my really close friends and family saw that. And they're like, Bam, that's not you. Like, what was going on? And I think ultimately it's okay. It's okay to bark and it's okay to bite. Especially as men, young men, it's okay to be a dog. Just like a normal dog, there's even a sweet and loving dog, you're petting it, it's okay. Or maybe you're roughhousing with a dog and then it's, for whatever reason, just doesn't like you in its space, touching it. It's going to let you know by kind of like doing that thing. And then if you keep doing it, it's going to like bite you. And so that's not a bad dog. It's just a dog response. And that response, although it's like you kind of like lose yourself, I would never want that dog inside of me to go away. Because if you do suppress that, because you don't want people to be afraid of you, you don't want to cause ripples in the world, eventually you shut that down so much into when you need that dog to come out, then it might not be there. And there's a lot of people who have experienced that, including myself, to where something happens and you freeze instead of fight. And so having a default aggressive approach to the world and being able to take ownership and say, I'm sorry, I lost it a little bit, for me personally is much more where I want to be than I've completely domesticated myself and I no longer have the ability to bark and bite. I just kind of like lock up and just take whatever is approached to me and say, I'm strong enough, it's okay, I don't want to cause any ripples in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely resonate heavily with like not having, or like by nature of how we were raised, by nature of the containers that we've been in, by nature of our conditioning, not having that healthy anger expression specifically. And I definitely think we see it at length manifest in really kind of twisted, profane, strange ways. Because if it doesn't have a healthy outlet, which I actually think is like the physical container, it is like actually just moving the body mind like aggressively, whether it is martial arts or something like that, even just hill sprints, like exerting that energy, letting it move through your body and getting it out, it turns into things like addiction with pornography or a violent hyper focus on business or something like this, like the stuff that ruins families and like turns men into shadows of themselves. The flip side of that though is that I do, when I hear like the lack of control part, I wonder how that makes you right now, consciously looking back. Like, does any part of that worry you or scare you? Like the moments of like, wow, I was outside of myself, like, and now that you are physically capable.
No. And I think if you have those moments, or if you are that type of person, for me, I would say, like, let's say I had a son and he was in that situation and he came home and he said, hey dad, I was at a party and some dude just choked me out, and I kind of lost my cool and I slammed him a little bit and I got on top of him, I shook him around. I'm like, how are you doing? Are you all right? And if he was like, I feel like I lost my cool, I'd be like, hey, don't be so hard on yourself. That situation happened, someone choked you out and then you reacted. Very normal. Okay. But then we'd have a deeper level conversation of, okay, why were you in that environment? How were you acting before to where that person thought it was okay or funny to do that? Why is that person within your circle? What could you do so that when you go into environments, you don't have to watch your back and be put in that situation to where you have to lose your cool? And we'd have that type of conversation, because I think that is more important. If it was like just a normal like losing your cool, but if you're in a situation that at some point will push your buttons, I start to say, why are you in those environments? Who are you around? And what can we do so that, you know, that dog doesn't come out that way?
Right. That's a really good answer. It reminds, like, what comes to mind when you say that is like extreme accountability, which is like at the end of the day, you could make excuses up and down the line. Like, I can't control who shows up to the party. I can't control who's there. I can't control this guy decided to jump on me. But it's like, that may be true. And at the same time, it's still going to be your responsibility to deal with the environment. So either just don't show up, or, you know, pay more attention to your surroundings, have one less drink or whatever it may be, so that you can kind of keep your wits about you. Again, like a very masculine sort of frame. But I guess with all of this, and like we talk about that dog, we talk about being aggressive, physical expression, exerting yourself, training. How do you find the balance for things like grace and patience and holding space for yourself, like the feminine as well?
In general, or in those situations?
I'd say in general, because it seems like a lot of what we discussed and I know about you, at least through observation, is just like you have all of these outlets that are like the boyish fun. And granted, you're a guy, so you'll need more of it compared to the other. But just like anything, if you go too far and you don't find that middle way, it can be unbalanced.
Yeah. The balance that I really get is what people call like the samurai morning. And it's been something that has really grounded me. If I ever feel like I'm a little bit too out there, a little bit too aggressive, a little bit too edgy, emotionally volatile, and it's waking up before the sun rises, sitting in meditation with yourself, doing some exercise, maybe aggressive exercise or just like some light stretching, primal movement type of exercise. And then usually with that, there is some type of water cleansing. Even it's a cold shower, jumping into a river, jumping into the ocean, and giving yourself that time before the dawn to process and to like feel how am I showing up today? What is coming up in your dream world, if there was any lingering stuff that was happening, processing. And then when the sun starts to rise up, you've kind of been with yourself and giving yourself that time to feel, to process, to cleanse yourself and be ready for the day. And then as the day comes, there's a spaciousness that's about you that you created. And, you know, there's a lot of things that I love enjoying to do that are more masculine, fighting, motorcycle riding, surfing, so to speak. But so much about what I do on a movement practice is very subtle, is very quiet, is very small, to give myself spaciousness within myself, so that when I go and do those things, like I have like a balance about my life. And that morning movement practice has like always been an anchor for me. If I'm ever like, I need to find some balance right now.
Do you have a relationship with God? Is there a spirituality aspect to what you're discussing?
Yeah, huge. And I feel, and I notice actually, that if I wake up at that special 3:30 or 4 a.m., I'm like, okay, I gotta go have a conversation with God. And the way that I conversate is through silence, prayer, meditation, and through gentle movement, and then through some kind of water cleanse. And the entire kind of event is that, let me get straight with myself and let me get straight with God to see what's going on. After that, my day is just smooth sailing.
For sure.
Yeah.
Have you always been religious or spiritual? Like, have you always believed in something more?
Yeah, I for sure was raised in a Catholic household. My father was like maybe a few months away from taking his vows to become a Catholic priest before he married my mother. And so Catholicism was like very much part of growing up. But we had this monastery that we went to. Like when we went to like a normal like church, I was kind of like, I didn't really feel it. Didn't really feel the vibes. But
like
we went
a Protestant. When you say normal, you mean Protestant?
It was a Catholic church,
okay.
But I mean like a normal
Novus Ordo.
Yeah, like any probably Catholic church you can find in the U.S. But we had a monastery that we went to, and there were monks that lived on the monastery, and there was like incense, and you could sit outside if you wanted to. So I could be participating in our Sunday ritual, but I could sit outside on the grass on the floor. And I could hear what was going on. There was incense, there was chanting, and there was also outside in nature. And so sometimes I would be plugged into what was happening in the monastery or the homilies, but then a lot of times it was just me being outside, and that was my time to go within myself and have those deep conversations with God, and always just felt like grateful for those environments, but never like I need to go talk to somebody to find answers. From an early age, I just had this feeling like it's inside of me, it's there, and those answers are there. If I want them, I can sit in silence and go find it. So I'm really grateful for my parents and the Catholic Church for giving me this, maybe it was like 4 or 5 years old, where I was like, oh, this is training wheels. This is just a place to practice this spirituality, just like school was. And so from that, my spiritual understanding or muscle connection with God has taken many different forms, but has like evolved from there, and now is deeply intertwined with my movement practice and teaching movement. And I feel like it's what I'm here to do, and that feels really good.
That's powerful. Is there any time you can remember that you feel like you were far from God? Yeah. And it's so funny to feel far from God. Maybe I was like 24 years old, and it was like clearest message from God where he's like, Bam, go to the military. And it was really confusing for me. I was like, dude, like, I've got a mohawk. I'm like, that's not my vibe type of thing. But it was a very clear message. And I would feel, okay, this is the path that I'm being asked to go on. It's scary. Should I do it? Should I not do it? And so I'd follow down that path. And whenever I did it, I was full of anxiety, fear, but also deeply connected to God. I could hear. And it was like this constant conversation. And then there was times when I was like, you know what, I'm not going to go in the military. That's not my life. That's not what I want to do. I'll do something else. And every single time that I stepped away from that path or that direction, there was radio silence. It's almost like right now I can feel it. There's like this like static, into where if I sit in silence and I have an intention, or I ask a question, or I simply just speak within my mind's eye, there will be like almost like a give and take, a response, a connection. And when I've gone off the path, I could just feel quietness inside of my soul. Like it was like the radio had been, like I hung up the phone. I was like, that's too much. I'm going to go do something else. And I'll hang up the phone. And that silence, that's one of the worst feelings that I've ever felt. And I found myself going back and forth through my 20s, like go in the military, not go in the military, go in the military, not go in the military. And the last time that I was like, I'm not going to do it, I started doing tree work in Oregon, like climbing these like massive fir trees, doing pruning, doing like cutting, like chainsaws. Like I could not believe that my work was being outside, climbing trees, cutting trees down, playing with chainsaws. I was having so much fun. It was like physical. I was like, this is checking all my boxes. And then I could see, oh, I could start a tree working company. I could have my own crew, and I could actually make good money. I could buy a little farm, have a wife, kids, chickens, little cow. I was like, this might be it. And I like sat in that for quite a long time, and there was radio silence. And so I found a life that was beautiful, that I could have settled into, but I was so uncomfortable with there being radio silence. And I said, I don't want that for the rest of my life. I want the connection. I want that to be there. So what do I need to do? And so, I left that and then went into the military. How long were you in the military?
3 months. A total of 3 months. Yeah.
Can you elaborate on why it was only 3 months?
Well, I think this is also really funny if you are somebody who does have a calling to go do something. We oftentimes create a story around what it is we're going to do, what it's going to look like, how long we're going to be doing that, our successes within that thing. Like, for instance, starting a business or like a podcast. Like, you have this trajectory in your mind's eye of what that is. But especially if this is a direction, a mission that has been asked of you from, let's say, the eternal source of love, like God or your higher self, it's going to ask you to go somewhere, but you don't really know why. And so I created this huge story, special operations in the Air Force. And right when I got there, it was the height of COVID from 2021 into 2022. And maybe within the first week of basic training, we had an experience where I denied all the vaccinations that they were giving us. And that led to a bunch of complications where they're like, why is this guy denying vaccinations? They don't like it when people do that. To getting tested positive for COVID and being quarantined in a hotel room for 10 days. And then eventually being in this like military half house purgatory for 21 days until I was released from the military. But these going in, I felt as soon as I got in and complications started to happen, was like, oh, I'm not here to go like shoot guns and jump out of helicopters and do craziness. There was actually some lessons that I needed to learn. And that was why I was being asked to go into the military. The first lesson was in this weird lining us up and going into the medical facility where they're putting pills in our hands and giving us vaccinations and not saying what they're doing to us. And consciously walking out of this long line where everyone is just like stepping through this carousel and then like shots, all these vaccines are going through, and walking up to the authorities, the people in charge, and saying, I am not doing vaccines today, was really important, because all my life I believed in the sovereignty of my body. I believe that it's my choice. Like, I can say yes, I can say no, but going in front of, let's say, like 150 other military people that were joining like my age, they're watching me, and then walking up to the authority figures and being like, no, and just saying no, and then all of them like getting around me and like yelling and being like, what are you doing? And I'm just like, no. And it's like the end of the story.
Wow.
No.
Yeah.
I'll take whatever consequences come from this, but it's no. And I've made that choice. And that really solidified that I deeply believe in the sovereignty of every single human alive right now, and their ability to say yes and their ability to say no. And it's absolutely critical that we not only nurture that in ourselves, in our friends, in young ones that are coming up, but we protect it as well. Because if we don't have that, it gets, it's very disrespectful to the experience of the human. And I think it's very important. So that was one of the lessons, but I quickly saw that this was something much different than I had ever expected, but was extremely impactful and crucial for me in my next layer of life, my next journey. And so, for instance, with the entire sovereignty thing, is when I'm teaching movement to people, a big part of the conversation is this yes and this no, that we've been slowly, our culture has creeped in and kind of shrouded our awareness about our ability to make choices for ourselves. And it happens at such an early age. For instance, I need to go to the bathroom. Instead of like, I need to go to the bathroom, it's like, may I go to the bathroom? And somebody else is in charge of saying yes or no for my physical body that wants to just do a natural thing like eliminate. Go to the bathroom, take a pee or poo, whatever. Or I'm not comfortable in this chair. I'd like to stand up. And somebody says like, no, you need to sit down. Or you need to be here at this certain time. Or you need to say these things. And so they're very small and there is a certain amount of like discipline, etc. But for me personally, I'm a little bit extreme, but I never said I wanted to go to school and have that experience.
Right.
So
nobody asked me.
Yeah, nobody asked me. And so a lot of people have these underlying ways of offloading their sovereignty and their choices of their physical body to the external world, as opposed to realizing that it's all within our power, and that's how it should be.
I mean, that's extremely powerful and resonant. I mean, I'm immediately also thinking, because I've done a podcast on this before, but I struggled for about 5 years or so with some pretty disordered eating. Very insecure at a young age around body consciousness. Like, I was an athlete as well growing up. So I played the sports, had the coordination, did fine in the games, but I would never look the part. Like, I was always kind of chubby. So I just like didn't want to take my shirt off in the locker rooms, just hyper conscious from a very young age. And I remember being like in 5th grade, watching YouTube videos on like how to get abs, and it like crazy, like kind of psychotic level stuff. So I was like very conscious around what I ate. But the thing that came to mind around other people telling you is just the simple of like, this is what's for dinner, and oh, you haven't finished your plate, like you can't leave the table, or like you need to finish this, or you don't have a choice around what you're eating, how much of it you're eating. And that's like standard Americana stuff, because our parents were raised by people who lived literally through the Great Depression. Yeah. So it's like you eat the bones of the animal you're consuming, because this is all we have. And so that scarcity, I think, like lingers through. And then like the years of like restriction and purging for myself, restriction and binging, because it's like you tell yourself you can't have it, but like according to whose rules, and it was almost this like self psychological harm thing. But without expanding on that too much, or like reopening that same podcast, that definitely hit home for me, like that sovereignty in your body, and the yes and the no, like tuning back into, instead of saying, okay, this blue app on my phone says that I have to have 200 grams of protein today, regardless of what I feel like, regardless of what my digestion is, regardless of how much movement I do that day, or how much water I took, or how I slept. I'm not going to listen at all. I'm just going to sit down and either force it down or like starve myself and restrict myself. It's now been like a multiple year process of like tuning back in, right, and seeing like, I'm going to eat this and just listen.
Yes.
Listen, like, how do I feel right now? Do I want the next thing, or am I afraid that I won't have it in the next meal, so I have to eat it now? And it's this crazy, I know it may sound to like the wider audience a little bit woo, a little bit mushy, whatever, just because it is like very a lateral conversation that a lot of people don't have consciousness around, but it is crazy, and it's very first principles as well. Like we're stripping it back. There's no, you didn't go to school, you don't have a job, you're not working anything. Your job is to be an organism and live. Part of that is eating, sleeping, shitting, existing. And it's been so, like you said, it's been so disrupted. The conversation with our body, you talk about like radio silent. It's like there's always been the signal there, but we just like put the walls up, It's absolutely crazy. And the movement stuff is interesting to me because I have always been athletic, but a lot of the training has been standard pedagogy, like whether it's Olympic lifting or strength training through sports. So also now getting into a season of my life where I'm tuning into, how does my physical body feel, like what positions work well, like how can I sleep differently. It's very interesting to me, but it's all very new. When you work with people at scale, what are some of the things that you see tend to be the biggest consistent unlearnings that they have to go through?
Yeah, really consistent unlearning is what you're supposed to do, what is right. Like, there are so many rules that people have adopted and aren't aware that that's like a rule that they have. Like and it's also one of my favorite things in the world is to like break the rules down and show people like, you can do that. You can just make your name Bam Lionheart. Like, yeah, like you could just do that. People are like, what? Like, no. But a good example is how you choose to wait, how you choose to rest. Go to the airport. Everyone is like, you have to sit in these chairs that they built and provided for you. I'm like, no, I'm going to sit on the ground because that's what feels comfortable for me. That's what my body enjoys. I don't feel comfortable in those chairs. And so I go sit on the ground and people look at me, and half the people are kind of angry at me, like, you're not supposed to do that, you're not following the rules. And the other half of people are like curious, like, wait, what is that person doing? And then there's like a really small amount of people who see that, resonate with it, and then they come over and they start stretching with me or hang out. And they're like, oh, this is a safe place to do that. And so the unlearning is in waiting and resting. That how you wait and rest is you should do it in a way that feels good to your body. If you really tap in, most of the time sitting in a chair is not enjoyable. What is really enjoyable is just like laying on the floor like a dog or a cat. You know, it's like really enjoyable, and that's an okay thing to do. There's also postural things, how you're supposed to stand. We've actually been taught to tuck our tailbones underneath and push our hips a little bit forward and like pull our shoulders back. This posture, and I can start to kind of piece together how it came about.
Sure.
But the objective reality is that posture restricts movement. And the tail tucking is a posture of submission and fear. And so when you start to be your tallest, biggest self in your posture that feels really open in movement, like people don't always resonate with that. And if I ask a client to adopt a posture that feels good in their body or that gives them more access to movement, one of the first things they say is like, well, aren't you supposed to do X, Y, and Z? Well, aren't you supposed to do this? I'm like, who taught you all of these rules and regulations? How about we make the authority your physical body and your body sensation that says, this feels good to me, I like this, or this doesn't feel good to me. But we've kind of offloaded that to, well, I heard this, this, and this. Or female clients were like, well, my ballet instructor told me this. And so breaking those things down is really important. The ballet one, can I talk about that for a second?
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite. Commonly, when young women are put into ballet school, they're taught how to stand, how to do things with their physical body. And so they'll say, well, my ballet teacher told me that I should stand like this. And then my next question is, why did they tell you that? Well, they said, well, that's what you're supposed to do in ballet. And I say, okay, who is ballet for? And they're like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? Like, well, tell me, like, what is ballet about? Well, it's about getting on a stage and dancing. I'm like, cool, are you dancing for yourself? No, there's an audience watching. Okay, that's a really important part in ballet. There's an audience and then there's you. And people are watching you make movements happen. And so when you're positioning and posturing yourself, are you doing that because it's the healthiest and strongest thing for your body? Or because it creates a visual for the people that are looking at you? And they say, yeah, they're making me make pretty lines. And I'm like, are those pretty lines for you or for somebody else? Oh, it's for somebody else. So how you've created rules around your posture and your movement is for somebody else. The way that you're holding your shoulder, and this is most people, the way that you're holding your shoulders and your posture is not because that feels the strongest, safest, and best for your body, because you want to have, quote unquote, good posture for somebody else to say, you're doing a good job. And that comes back down to the school thing. You know, we're learning and we're saying things so that somebody gives us a good grade. So somebody says, you're doing it right. You did the right thing. Good job. And we get that little like, okay, I'm doing it. Like, yeah, I'm posturing myself. And so changing the language and the story around my movement, how I hold my body, is for me and it's not for you. That is like a really powerful and like deep conversation that we all should have with our subconscious many times over.
How, though, do you reconcile that humans by nature, we are both tribal and like very mimetic, meaning it's important that we interface with the tribe and people at large, because we can kind of make a spectrum. I don't know if this necessarily exists. There's like one end of the spectrum is hyper-conformist. I'll do exactly what the tribe says just so like I'm a perfect little whatever, I get my star. The other end is that I actually could not give a fuck about what anyone thinks, but by nature of doing something that potentially radical, you're completely ostracized, you're completely isolated, you're a non-conformist to any tribe. How do you reconcile that? Especially with a lot of your clients, they may not be able to be as primal as you know, walking around with the mane and like they have to go to some job that isn't as free, for instance. Does that ever come up?
It's an underlying conversation that happens as somebody goes through this process. And different people can engage with that at different depths. and we can do it. We can change or consciously move posture ourselves in ways that are good for us, but we can also do it and say like, well, wouldn't you want this for your children? Wouldn't you want this for everybody else? Like, for instance, at school, your kids are sitting in a chair. Maybe you as an adult feels really uncomfortable in your office setting to not sit in a traditional chair and use something like a kneeling chair or a straddle stool or a yoga ball, because everyone's going to be like, why are you sitting in this weird chair? And you're like, I'm uncomfortable, like whatever. Okay, but now put your perspective in your, like, of a small child or your own children sitting in a chair in school. Wouldn't you want that child to have the option to go rest on the ground or to like move around? And you'd say like 100%. So by actively and consciously choosing things that are for me, for my personal health, then we give permission to other people around us to do the same thing. And I deeply care about humans and their ability to be sovereign and feel good and be free. And so I want to express that as much as I can to people. And so if we're not able to do it for ourselves, maybe thinking about doing it for other people, or in your office environment, being like, yeah, I can just take a little stretch break right now, right here by the water cooler. And maybe it looks a little bit weird that I'm doing some stretches, but hey, you can do that too. And it's not, it doesn't have to be that crazy and weird. But there are people that they're not going to push the button. I'm somebody who's going to go against the grain. That's just how I am. And I hope that there are others that are willing to do that in like very small ways.
I love that. And it's bringing to mind this idea that keeps coming up in my awareness, this idea of like selfishness as selflessness. There's a quote from Ayn Rand, who wrote The Fountainhead. It's from The Fountainhead. And she says, to say I love you, one must first know the I. And then the quote expounds like the love of someone who does not know and care for themselves is like the love of a parasite. And this idea that until you're taking care of yourself, you cannot actually be of high service to other people. And in fact, the highest service to others is to be the fully self-expressed self. Because like you're saying, we're all wandering around here pretending to be some shaded version of ourselves that we think other people want. But deep down, when somebody meets a real one, when they see Bam trucking down the street with his, tailbone proper, bare feet, hair flowing, just present, chest out, they're like, what the hell is going on right there? But they'll like talk to you and they're like, I wish I could be like that. Mm-hmm. Or they'll walk up and then begin to share whatever, because something about your enigmatic presence, the strangeness, gives them permission to be weird, because the secret is everybody's weird at home. Yeah. And they're begging. And this is why I like so rapidly in my journey was like, I just knew I could not stay in like a formal job setting. I'd literally rather chop down trees or live on a ranch or whatever, because, and it's not like a holier than thou, it was just, I felt so ill fit in this performative environment where we are all pretending to be something that we're not, but none of us want to do it. And it's not this thing where like the person at the top likes to be this version of themselves that they're not. So we all have to be like, okay, well, it's he's at the top. So like we can all just because that guy, he goes home and he's weird. He's like, he takes off his suit. Yeah. He gets comfortable finally. Yeah. And then whatever. And the whole world is like that. So like you're talking about, it does take every once in a while, the prolific, the firebrand, the one crazy motherfucker who is like, actually, no jab for me. Mm-hmm. Actually, I'm comfortable down here. I'm going to take my shoes off. I'm going to whatever. Mm-hmm. I'm going to lay in the sun with my shirt off, as a matter of fact. Like, I'm not going to put sunscreen on. Like, the list goes on. Mm-hmm. But it's through those few people that are brave. It's that bravery that, like, breaks the carrying capacity, or is the activation energy for the remainder of people. Mm-hmm. It's one of the things I feel so emboldened about with my platform, is that, like, for better or worse, I'm just not that, I don't know if afraid is the right word, but like I'm confident and brave enough to do the stupid shit in public, mm-hmm. Like actually give a swing and really like fight for evil. I know we talked about that off air before the podcast. And so it's part of why I'm like participating and trying to give my gift at scale, because I know for a fact there is somebody who like has that thing, that gift, but they're just a little, I don't know if I can, and they just need that one example.
Yeah.
They just need that one person, like you said, the jujitsu teacher, the one person to teach them that it's okay, to potentially reframe. Could be a line in a book, a song, a lyric in a song, a line in a poem, but just like creating those little doors, those little like touch points for people to be like, holy shit, that's me.
I would say too, also the importance of courage. I heard once, and I really like this, that courage is the preliminary virtue that gives way to all other ones. Like if you want love, you got to first like have the courage to go and to give love, and then to receive love. Or honesty, the courage to be honest. It takes a little bit of that, like stepping into the unknown, stepping into something that's like a little bit feels vulnerable. And courage is a skill, a muscle that you can train. And to me, my physical movement is the easiest and most accessible thing that I can do to like do that. For instance, you're in a crowded place and you stop moving and then just put your hands out to the side, put them up in the air, take a big breath in. Immediately your body will be flooded with like, people are looking at me, what's going on? And you'll see people like stop, be like, what is this person doing? You put your hands down, you just keep going about your way. And so you like, I'll put myself in those states where it's like you're going against the grain of these unspoken rules of movement. Like, hey, you're not supposed to just stand up in a restaurant and then just put your hands in the air and do a nice little stretch. Like you're not, that's weird. It's like, yeah, but I'm training right now. Because if I can't stand up and put my hands over my head, like, am I gonna be the guy that if someone comes in and has some bad intentions for everyone in that restaurant, all of a sudden I'm gonna turn into Superman? Like, no. Like if you can't just stand up and put your arms in the air, or if you don't have the courage just to walk around like barefoot, all of a sudden your courage is just gonna come out when it needs. Like, no. If you don't train it, then it's the chances that it's gonna actually be there for you are very small. Or maybe you do, become Superman in those events, but like, wouldn't you want to have a really high capacity to be courageous, which is I'm in an uncomfortable situation, but I'm consciously choosing how I'm moving.
Yeah, I love that. Another one that comes to mind on courage is C.S. Lewis says that courage is not just one of the virtues, but it is the form of every virtue at the testing point. And it's almost the mirror to what you were kind of saying, where you were kind of saying like you're gonna have to first be courageous to express love, to express any of the virtues. But C.S. Lewis is almost saying the opposite, where it's like if you want to have those virtues, it will take the form of courage when it matters. Yeah. Because anybody can be noble in a glass tower. It's easy to look down, yap about virtues. We're on a podcast, we're doing it, right? But this is for the mind. This is to expose ourselves to other people, plenty of stimulation. But like you said, what if something goes wrong in the world? When do you get pressed by 100 people in suits and they're like, it's time for your shot,
right?
It's time for you to relinquish your weapons. It's time for you and your family to move here, X, Y, and Z. Whatever that question is, who are you in those moments? Every single virtue you've ever had distills down to courage. The word courage comes from the Latin and early French root cor, which is like your heart. And so the early interpretations were to speak one's heart fully. So I love that. I love that it's like, it's always going to be represented in this moment to stand and speak your truth, like chest out, and like you said at the beginning, it comes down probably to a confident yes or no.
Yes.
At the end of the day, like just full body, chest out. Nah.
Yeah.
Not today. Not today. Not with my family. Not with whatever the situation is. So yeah, that's what came to mind there.
One thing that's really interesting about yeses and nos, and why I love movement or looking at movement so much, is because you get to see so many different layers of our beingness within your movement. For instance, yes and no both originate from the same place, Like from the base of your skull, like anyone watching right now, you can just put your hands at the base of your skull. You'll feel two bones on either side of the base of your skull. And then there's these two little joints. And from there, that's where you lift your head up and you go down. And that's the same place that you do left and right, yes and no. And if you just very slowly do a yes, you might find that your shoulders or your neck or your traps assist in this yes, which means that there's like a little bit of some type of guarding within the ability to say yes. Or like no, if you say no with your spine, as opposed to this is just a very clear no. I am saying it is a no. There is no, like, you know, when people go like no and they do the side to side, it's like no, yes and no. And so if you just, how do I do the movement of saying yes? And where am I using excess energy to say yes because maybe you're not like sure about your yes, or maybe you're not comfortable saying no. So you do it with your spine or your shoulders rather than just a very clear, I'm staring at you, no, or yes. Like it's like very clear. And so that's like a kind of going into the somatic practices of, and I hope that we start to have these deeper conversations, because those conversations to me have so much more juice, wisdom, promote personal sovereignty rather than, okay, great, you got a big bench press.
Sure.
Like I'd much rather be like, my ability to say yes and no is very clear and direct than having, you know, a really strong bench.
What's something that during your development, learning, and teaching of the primal movement practice has surprised you about the body mind, in similar to what you were describing, like kind of that unlock about the yes and the no being like as above, so below? Like there's a somatic representation of your ability to hold a confident yes or no. What's something that you found, whether it was in your own body, like maybe something that was locked that you unlocked, or at length that you see across people?
The most surprising aspect, and that I'm continuously being re-surprised about, is the inherent and innate intelligence of the human body. It starts with like, hey, you know, like you talked about with food. Try this food. Does that feel good? Are you getting like a yes response, like from your body, like yes or no? That's like very kindergarten, like superficial. You started to go into instincts, sensations, and this communication with your body. And then if you continue down that rabbit hole, you'll notice it's like, my body is craving this food because your body wants a certain nutrients. You're like, wait, how does my body like know? And then how is it communicating that to me? That's crazy. And so from everything from food, nutrition, sleep, to even like having double labral tears and my body, by being quiet, my body leading me to the exercises and to the exact movements that are going to heal me and put my shoulder back into a place where it starts to regenerate itself. And that's very hard to invite people into, especially because we almost approach everything through the mind, but it has to go through the limbic system, or you're like almost like your lizard brain, to where you're just listening to these sensations of your body. And so the body wants to heal. The body also wants to open up your fascial networks and your energy and have everything available to you. If you can approach your physical practices, your hobbies, even weight training with this, like, I need to listen to my body, the amount of connection and strength that you will get is like, it's unfathomable, to where you will like click something in your body and you're like, I couldn't never have learned this from YouTube or a trainer or anyone. I simply just listened to my body and it showed me something that like is the most incredible thing ever. And it's just constantly like going again and again and again and again. It's like this conversation with this massively intelligent being that is you and has so many answers for everything you're looking for. It surprises me, like, yeah, how many times I have these aha awakening moments is really a big source of joy for me.
It's amazing. Are there any recent examples that you can think of? Or even just ones that stand out?
Yeah, surfing. So I was surfing a ton in Nicaragua, and I wasn't as fast or as powerful in the water paddling. And so as I'm continuing to surf, one day I'm just going to listen to and paddle as best as I can. And through a bunch of different stuff, eventually my spinal erectors locked into place. But they didn't lock into place like if you did like a back extension, but they locked into the place and they rolled inwards. They locked into place, rolled inwards, and I'm like, what is that sensation? And I could breathe and separate my spinal erectors a little bit, which like almost rolled them like a towel even more. And then when I took a paddle stroke, I was like going faster, and it was more efficient than like I had been surfing before. I'm like, dude, like what? Like, what is this thing? And then I'm like walking around after surfing, like feeling this in my spinal erectors. I'm like, what is that? And I'm noticing it in the walking and how this energy just continues to rope up through that. Really, really wild.
Were you able to, after that happened to you, were you looking at other surfers? Like, are you guys feeling this sort of situation, or?
Yeah, well, I'm constantly looking at surfers, paddling technique and the development of the musculature of their back. And you will be surprised how jacked surfers are.
Yeah.
They're not lifting weights. They're just on a board, just paddling all day. And the back development is like absolutely like out of this world type of thing. But I don't think there's like a surfer where I could talk about this stuff with. It's just because I'm deep within my body. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah, I definitely, in my surfing experience, although as limited as it has been, I definitely could get the the paddle reps up for sure. Is there anything that you feel like in developing primal movement thus far is like the next big thing that you're excited to incorporate? Because I noticed in our conversations outside of this podcast, we've talked about a lot of different modalities or exogenous experiences that you've had, whether it be plant medicine or sound healing or all that stuff. You're obviously bullish on just tapping into the body's intelligence, using it through movement practices, essentially just you and gravity, just resistance of the earth. Have you considered, or are you looking into the kind of like total incorporation of any of that stuff?
Yeah. And I think it's a huge piece that is creating so much fire and motivation for this. I'm pretty upset. There was actually a lot of rage inside of me for being a C-section baby, growing up in the suburbs, and being placed in a chair through school. Not that any one person or it maybe even the culture is consciously doing this, but that was the experience that I had. My birth experience was extremely unnatural, and growing up in a concrete jungle was extremely unnatural, and then sitting in chairs as a kid was extremely unnatural for me. I'm really grateful for my life, but through this conversation of movement, I want it to bleed out into other places, to inspire others, to open the eyes of others, so that things that are very unnatural to the human and that break down our physical body and disconnect us from our innate intelligence, our intuition, our yeses and our nos, those things start to fade away, and we start to collectively reclaim our sovereign birthrights of being like humans, which is like we are animals, these spiritual animals, but that animal part of being connected with the earth, eating natural foods from our natural environment, having a birth process that invites us into nature instead of disconnects us from it. Even birth, death, all of these things are like, how can we reclaim our naturalness or our very close relationship with nature? And so primal movement is a much about reclaiming our natural way to move in our human body, but is also a social movement of like, let us understand and protect that naturalness that we have with food, with community, with what it means to be born, to die, to be in relationship with others, and to go in that way. And so when you start to open up movement, natural movement, it's like a little red pill to where you start to like look around and see what
Observe some patterns.
Yeah, some other patterns that come up. It's real sneaky. I like it.
It is. It's probably maybe the most indirect that I've observed, because typically it's just, oh, I just learned this thing that I found online. You know, I went to some sort of YouTube rabbit hole that turned into radical ideological positions. But I noticed that you've mentioned multiple times, and this was the thing that I actually wanted to circle back to. Multiple times, tangentially, you've mentioned children and child rearing, and I can see the way that you say it. Kids matter a lot to you. What are you thinking about for family, for yourself?
I imagine, okay, for instance, like the tension that I have that a doctor with plastic gloves like pulled me out of my mother's womb, as opposed to like having a natural birth experience, makes me want to do it different. And so I dream of my children, you know, God willing, that my wife would be in the ocean and give like an ocean birth, and instead of like the ocean and my wife's hands would be the first thing that would touch my children's body, and then they would feel the sun and like the ocean breeze and like the salt and the warmth of my wife's body. That is like, oh, that like sets me on fire. And so who knows if I can make it happen, but I'm hoping for like 5 or 7 just savage, naked, wild like children just running around a big old property, who are like deeply connected to nature and their own instincts. We'll see, but God willing.
Amen. Amen to that. We can send a prayer after the podcast for that, because yeah, I imagine much of the same. I mean, a lot of what we've discussed off air, you start to recognize some patterns, and it becomes very clear that we're fighting against a very organized, a very consistent modus operandi entity or group of individuals governed by said entity, and a core component of that religion is the children. It is not a mistake that so much goes on in the birthing process, but whether it's body position or circumcision without any sort of anesthetic or painkiller, like the adrenaline is a component of what we're talking about. Again, I don't want to take this into a really dark place, but I share the righteous anger and like borderline hatred for these sorts of practices, because it gives me a visceral feeling in my body when I think about it happening to any child. But of course, like obviously a younger version of myself, praise God, I've kind of made it out, you know, I think I turned out all right. But where could I be had that not been limited in any way, right? Like that, I think that's something that you're kind of alluding to, is like what would your potential or my potential or your children's potential be if it was unbridled from the very beginning? And something I think about for child rearing, there's this idea going around called TCS, take children seriously. And it's very much this like unlearning. And I'm presenting it, I'm trying to pill my brothers on it, because the vision is like, I have 2 younger brothers. They want families. All of us, mega compound. We each have our son armies. It becomes a son kingdom. And we're all, you know, like on said property doing the thing. So all of these different things I'm trying to open their eyes to. And one of the things about takes children seriously, it's like an alternative education. So instead of sending them to school, you teach them at home, but it's not quite homeschooling, because the point is that you don't school them. You just take them seriously as if they're little adults. And the wild part is when you treat a child like an adult, it behaves like one. Yeah. We don't tell other adults, like I don't walk up to Bam or Jonas or Case and say, you need to finish what's on that plate. Or it's bedtime. It's bedtime. Bam, why are you still up?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you laugh, and it's like not insignificant that you laugh. Like it literally is a laughable thing for me to mention. And yet we do it for a consistent period of time during the formative years of our children. Conversely, we allow a tremendous amount of autonomy, and we expect a tremendous amount out of each other. I expect you to handle it. I expect you to drive here safely, pay your own bills, whatever it may be. And the crazy part is you're figuring it out, bro. I didn't have to help you do that. You got here, you're paying bills, you've put the gas in your car, and everybody's doing it. And so I think the idea is that, like, what if we expected that when they were little? And just investigate them curiously like little adults. And I think we have the ability, especially based on what I'm learning about history and where we've come from, even as recent as like 100 years ago, like the conversations you could have with a 7-year-old, the books that they were reading, it's profoundly different. I mean, we're talking about people who are reaching 18 who are illiterate now. And I mean, obviously that's not an accident, like what's going on out there. I think like this idea of just letting someone be radically free, it really excites me about like what they can surprise me with. And one of the things I'm excited about is like my kids greatly exceeding my potential just because they had a 18-year head start.
Mm-hmm.
They had no handcuffs. They
Yeah.
had no like ball and chain weight. So yeah, inshallah, that is the, that is the goal, to see what my kids can become. And I think what's also empowering is that you have this vision. Until today, we had not had a multiple hour conversation or like spent this much time in each other. Completely isolated containers in life. You have this vision. I have this vision. I continue to meet people who have this vision for their families and children, which means, in my opinion, that it's time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like God wants this to be real for us. And he's planting the dream not just in one person, but in a bunch of people, so that if somebody misses the mark, if you can't figure it out, it's like, hey, I sent that dream to everybody at this time because it's time.
Right.
You know? I was talking to Jonas on the way here about how it's remarkable where you meet somebody and they have this platform, through the internet, whatever, we get connected, and you had no idea until you met them that they existed, that their world, and you find out so much is aligning. So like all these synchronicities, these visions, these ideas, these dreams, and it's like, it's scary, but it's super exciting because it's like the good guys, like
Mm-hmm.
we're all individually kind of figuring it out at home. And then if we stay in the game long enough, if we stay in the arena, as I like to say, you start to find the others.
Yeah. The soldiers are gathering.
The soldiers are gathering.
They're coming together. The community, the web, the connections are happening at a rapid pace before my eyes. And I'm seeing everyone start to formulate. And it's really exciting to be part of the wave.
It's awesome. Well, I know that the world is better for your participation in it. So I'm thankful for this conversation. I'm thankful for the years of work. I especially want to acknowledge like how hard it is putting yourself into the public facing eye, sticking with it, like getting through that carrying capacity of like, okay, the thing's working now. People give you the pat on the back, like, cool, the social media thing's working. Because there was a period where it wasn't, and you stuck
Right.
it through the hard, the uncomfortable, the awkward, whatever, the years of uncertainty to be able to get here and have this conversation, because I wouldn't know you if you didn't. So thank you for that. Thank you for this conversation. Where can the people find more of you, and what are you working on that you're excited about?
You can find a little bit more about all this through primalmovement.org. Also, Primal Movement on YouTube. It's got some free resources, or Primal Movement on Instagram. If anyone has any questions, you can send me a message through Instagram if you got some things going on. I'm really excited about this year releasing a membership to where there's a lot of people that understand natural movement. They want to participate with it and the community that's growing, and that I get to be a part of, and then I get to kind of help foster and grow. And so having a membership where people get to do online classes, online training, and where they get to dive deeper into their understanding of their physical body. I'm super pumped on that.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
Well, I'll definitely have all your stuff linked below, but I almost forgot, because it has been a while since I've done a guest podcast. I have 3 closer questions.
Oh, let's go.
That I ask every guest, and I shall not miss, starting with you. So the first of the 3 is, if you could go back to a younger version of yourself and tell him one thing, what would that be, barring the butterfly effect?
I would tell him to run. Like, run. Like, keep that alive. It's what we do as humans. We're not necessarily like weightlifters. Our human animal is running. It's what we do really well. And like dolphins are swimming, lizards are crawling and stuff, we run. And if you didn't have that ability to get that in your system, in your DNA, it's really weird. It gets really weird. I work with people all the time, and I would just tell my younger self, like, yo, run. Like, run a lot.
I love that. Secondly, what is one quote that has always stuck with you, or that you try to live by?
Recently, it's faith over fear. Faith over, really simple. Faith over fear. Putting it on t-shirts, like faith and like little bigger sign over
Yeah.
fear. And so noticing in my life, in my mind, in my heart, where I have fear, and saying on the other side of that, where's the faith? And realizing that faith is much stronger, much more potent than any fear that I have.
Amazing. And finally, what do you believe is your gift, your unique gift to give the world?
Communicating extremely complex, esoteric, or technical understandings or truths about reality, specifically about our movement, and distilling it into like very digestible and simple ways that people can interact with and like consume.
Amazing. Well, I appreciate you, brother. It's been a pleasure. If you want to find more of the Vitruvian Podcast, obviously you found us Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you did. Please subscribe on said platform to find the next episode. More on YouTube, including the behind the scenes of what's going on here. You can follow myself on any socials at ZDSCHENKEN. And yeah, more to come. Super excited. But Bam, it's been excellent, brother.
Let's
Thank
go.
you. And yeah, more to come. Much
Thank you
love.
for having me.
Cheers.
And if he fails, at least fails while daring greater, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who know neither victory nor defeat.